Good afternoon, amazing guests and distinguished panelists. My name is Dr. Christian Toala, and I will be the moderator for today's panel presentation. In 2015, member states of the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Vowing to take bold and transformative steps, this agenda emphasizes that no one will be left behind. The UN further adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets, a series of bold and transformative actions that must be addressed to accomplish this agenda. The UN annually evaluates progress towards achievement of these goals at its high-level political forum. This year, the forum is reviewing in-depth progress made in realizing goal number 4, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. In many parts of the world, the challenge is to provide opportunities for children or adults to access education at all, because education is a game changer, which can open up life-changing possibilities for health, employment, gender equality, and more. In other settings, major educational challenges are providing inclusive and safe education for groups that face marginalization and discrimination. The thought at times is that in well-developed countries, education is a given. Perhaps we must take a deeper look to examine, is equity present within the field? Ask yourself, is the education our children receiving equitable? I hope the answer is yes. Or more often than not, the answer is, I don't know. Information is key, and the access to that information in a manner that is comprehensible is of utmost importance, not only to level the playing field, but also for our children to have the opportunity to make the best choice possible. When bringing this conversation into the anti-trafficking world, we must realize that the stakes are that much higher. Many educational institutions, political offices, or everyday individuals fear the topic, at times because it is an unknown, others because it includes the word sex or exploitation. It is at this point that we must point out that information is a tool that can allow a child to remain safe and identify when they might be in danger. When looking at the title of this event, you might have wondered why the P. Commonly, we see ABCs of education, but never a P. Well, that is because prevention is a key component of having an equitable education. There is a question that looms. What if we manage to employ anti-trafficking preventive education programs in schools and youth servicing organizations? Then what? Honestly, that is a good question. Many times different programs fail because there is no follow-up. There is no sustainability. It is here that we must realize that although the workshops might be done, the work is not, for the partnership must continue. For 30 years, ECPAT-USA has been creating awareness of the issue of the commercial sexual exploitation of children and advocating for measures that strengthen prevention and protection from child trafficking. An important part of our work is the development of knowledge, skills, and resilience of children through all of our educational programs. Since 2015, ECPAT-USA has increasingly been working with schools and youth servicing organizations, providing workshops to youth, educators, staff, parents, guardians, and caregivers. This afternoon, we are fortunate enough to have partners in the fight to end human trafficking. They will speak on their history, struggles, and efforts to protect youth from violence, exploitation, and human trafficking. It is not an easy task. And sometimes we take phrases like strengthening numbers for granted because they become so common that no one knows truly what it means. But today, as we will hear from our partners in protection, I will tell you this. There is true strength in numbers, because for every child out there, there's an adult that is a trustworthy individual, a role model. And our presenters today are much more than that. Our first speaker this afternoon is Meg Gardinier. She is the Secretary General of the ChildFund Alliance. She has over 25 years of experience in non-governmental organization development, advocacy, fundraising, strategic leadership, and volunteer management. Since July 2015, she is the Secretary General of ChildFund Alliance, a network of child development organizations working in 70 countries with an annual turnover of $580 million. She holds a master's degree in international political economy and development from Fordham University. She is a mother, a wife, and a strong advocate. Please welcome Meg Gardinier.
Christian, thank you very much. And thank you to Elizabeth and Christian for reaching out and inviting me to speak with you today. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a big fan of ECPAT. When ECPAT was first formed and only focusing on 4 countries in Southeast Asia to reduce the incidence of men trafficking to Asia for the purpose of engaging in sex with minors, I was involved in those very early days, and I'm always amazed when I see how ECPAT has grown in leaps and bounds and the breadth of work that it's tackled. While this issue that we are talking about today has risen, my remarks today are going to focus a little bit on what Christian talked about, which is developing the knowledge, skills, and resilience for young people to be successful. I think the other presenters are going to speak more specifically about work that they're doing on anti-trafficking education, which is very important, and I look forward to hearing that. What I've been asked to do is just give a little overview about the global statistics on violence against children. Then I'm going to move into an aspect of education, which is digital literacy. Really trying to focus on the fact that we are increasingly in an online world, and that world presents both a threat and an opportunity. And at ChildFund, we like to focus on both the threat and opportunity in equal ways. So if I may, I would like to share my screen, and here we go. And then I'll try to get into the correct, bear with me for 1 second while I get into the correct formation here. Just looking for from the beginning slideshow. There we go. Okay. And I'll be doing this through the lens of a campaign that ChildFund Alliance has launched recently called Web Safe and Wise. So some of the material that I'll be sharing with you, which is open for all, will reflect this campaign that we've launched as an opportunity to explain what we're doing on digital literacy. Just a little snapshot. We all know, oops, got to go back here for a second, apologies. We all know that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child makes these lofty but important statements about all children having the right to survive and develop in a life free from violence, abuse, and exploitation. We also know that the Sustainable Development Goals that were adopted by the UN in 2015 have a specific target on ending all forms of violence against children and a target on trafficking. So we certainly see that the global community agrees that there should be targets and indicators, rules and laws and policies, but it's a totally different thing to implement them. And as we sit here in 2020, the World Health Organization estimated that up to 1 billion children between the ages of 2 to 17 experienced physical, emotional, sexual, or other forms of violence throughout the year. So our call to action, all the work that we're involved in, is very badly needed. The human cost of violence, which includes death, injury, displacement, loss of education, and healthcare, are immense. And the economic costs are immense as well. It's estimated that the economic impact of physical, psychological, and sexual violence against children could be as high as US $7 trillion per year. This figure comes from a study that ChildFund Alliance did in 2014 on the economic cost of inaction. That figure is quoted widely between 5 and 7 trillion a year, but it's still used 6-7 years later to emphasize what happens when we don't pay attention to something. And that's why I'm so pleased that ECPAT is focusing on the issue of prevention today. 120 million girls, or 1 in 10, have suffered some form of forced sexual contact at some points in their lives. And it's estimated that 73 million boys have been subjected to sexual violence in a given year. And these statistics are always changing. but they're the ones that we've been using from UNICEF for a long time. And I think most of you are very familiar with what we're talking about here when we share these stats. They might not be the most up-to-date stats. There might be a lot of things that we don't document that's hidden in plain sight. As we know, sexual violence against children is widespread, and its scale and its complexity have increased with digital technology. And this is especially true in light of the global COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, more than 153,000 websites reported as containing images of child sexual abuse. That was an increase of 16% from the year before. And it's estimated that a child goes online for the first time every half a second, with more than 200,000 children using the internet daily and around 800 million actively engaged in social media. These statistics come from UNICEF, they come from the We Protect Alliance, and they also come from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, all entities that have responsibly been documenting this issue for several years. Once again, the numbers may be greater than what we recognize. In 2021, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children Cyber Tip Line reviewed 16.9 million sexual abuse materials. In 2019 and it reviewed 21.7 million. So in 2021, it was 16.9. But in 2019, it was 21.7 million. In 2020, it was 29 million. So the numbers are going up and down. But what we see here is a real challenge with the fact that these things are increasing and, of course, hard to detect. And this brings us to child protection online, challenges and opportunities. And I'd like to just use as an illustration ChildFund Alliance's Web Safe and Wise campaign. The subtitle of it is to create a better digital world with children. It's a campaign aimed at protecting children from online threats while helping them benefit from the opportunities the internet offers. And we have two outcomes in our campaign. Outcome one, laws and policies to protect children from online child sexual exploitation and abuse are strengthened. And outcome two, children are effective digital citizens who are equipped to participate in civic engagement. Going back. Safely, ethically, and responsibly as part of their healthy development. So again, these two components, both protection through outcome number one, participation through outcome number two. Those two P's are very much what form ChildFund's work, child protection and child participation. A theory of change, I think will be very familiar to many of you. If ChildFund empowers children to become effective digital citizens, mobilizes key stakeholders, and promotes legislative and policy reforms which ensure online child safety, then we can reduce the threat of online child sexual exploitation and abuse of children across the goal. Big theory of change, but once again, what we're trying to do is that two-pronged approach. Promote good legislation, engage young people to navigate their way safely online. And why? And I think you recognize that digital technologies have radically changed childhood and adolescence in so many ways. Technology has literally transformed the way young people both learn and socialize. And I'm looking here at the goals for today's session about education. Is education equitable? Are young people learning tools and being given access to tools that allow them to be safe and to learn? And again, we think that there's a tremendous opportunity with the online world for a lot of young people to be charged into the global environment, access a lot of useful information, but also, of course, encounter some threats. So how do we maintain that balance? And that's what we're talking about, is helping children become effective digital citizens so they can fully benefit from the opportunities of an online world while being protected from online risks. And so, as I mentioned, we have to protect children from online threats, but also ensure that children have the skills to navigate the web safely. And what does that mean? It means helping children to acquire these skills as part of their healthy development. And we're engaged in a number of activities designed to provide safe learning environments and increased opportunities for young people to use the digital technologies safely and effectively. Before we went to work on this and began to decide what should our campaign look like, we did our own mapping. And I just want to point this out to you because we learned something that can be used as both an advocacy point in our field, or it can be a detractor. We learned that 60% of our members, and as I mentioned, we have members working in 70 countries impacting 23 million children and their families. 60% of those members have online safety programs. Very important point that I want to make just next. 80% of the programs are in the global south. And why is that important? In the early days, when we were looking at this issue as the part of our next strategic priority, and of course, this has been adopted as one of our first strategic priorities in our new strategic plan. Some of our members headquartered in Australia and Japan, Italy, Spain, work in those headquartered offices. Were also working overseeing programs in the global south. They hire their own staff and they have their own programs in Ecuador, El Salvador, Kenya, Philippines, Nepal, so forth. Some of them said, hey, I don't think this is an issue in the global south. It certainly is an issue in the global north because we're all wired, but it's not an issue in the global south. And I'm here just to really challenge you that it is increasingly an issue in the global south. And there are some very effective programs we can learn from. I'll also mention, some of you might know Ernie Allen, who is currently the chair of We Protect. I'm sure you work very closely with him at ECPAT. He has done some very interesting research through the Economic Threat Assessment Report, and in fact has challenged at times government ministers who say, from the global south, who say this is not an issue we deal with. In fact, in a couple of cases, Ernie sent people from Interpol out to a couple of countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America after their government ministries made those comments to investigate further to find out what is really happening online. And yes, a lot is happening online around the world. So we really owe it to our young people to do that combo of protection and participation with the online world. 75% of the programs that we learned about focus on online safety, education, and awareness. So it's obviously an issue that many people are recognizing is what we call an emerging threat to children. Other things we learned, privacy and encryption are incurring themes. Prevention is not being addressed. Digital literacy and digital citizenship is talked about an awful lot, but we're still working on it. Children's voices are pivotal, and that's where we come in many, many organizations. We want to change the world with children. We want to work with young people as they develop their own solutions. We want young people to be talking to the private sector and other tech companies who are preparing all these online platforms, because the young people are the best conveyors of their own experience. So just pointed some of that out. I'd like to also give a big shout out to ECPAT International. We consulted early on with the head of ECPAT International, with the head of ECPAT-USA, also with your board members. When we had our campaign launch in Barcelona in May, we invited the head of ECPAT International to come and present. So we really are working hand in hand, and in fact, following a lot of your leads and giving, really taking, I think in some ways, some direction from your expertise to figure out what our role is, because all of us have a role. It might be different in one place or another. It's a huge issue. There's a lot of players. We want to make a difference. And as I explained, that protecting children and helping them participate, those two P's are our niche in this. A couple of examples. In Kenya, ChildFund is implementing an online protection program, which increases understanding of the internet at the community level, in addition to improving children's awareness of the risks associated with using digital technology. This morning, I was invited to a group of friends meeting at UNICEF, and we heard a Kenyan gentleman from Kenya speak about the work that they're doing with UNICEF to make sure that more public primary schools are hooked up online, have access, have internet connectivity, but also a very important learning from them, and no surprise here, is that during the pandemic, it was great that there was some connectivity in schools, although there needs to be more, but it wasn't sufficient because the connectivity had to shift to the home territories. And there are a lot of challenges, I think, encountered when many young people outside of school, working at home in remote areas, could not access online, pointing to the terrific inequity, the digital divide, issues that I won't be talking about today, but there's a lot of very qualified people addressing this issue. Is how do you make sure there's digital connectivity available for all? Another program that might be interested in is Swipe Safe in the Asia Pacific. It's teaches young people, children and young people, the core competencies to be safe online, tries to create a safe learning environment, and mobilizes parents, youth, schools, and the private sector to play a role. We have a lot more information on Swipe Safe available if anyone would like to learn more. Just send me your email in the chat box. But I do want to point out something very important, and I'm hearing this across the line, is that we've got to work with young people and their parents, bringing parents and teachers and the young person along, not dealing with the young person in isolation of his or her environment. It's everyone's job, and also it's a great way to educate parents as well as teachers about this emerging threat to children, but also an emerging opportunity, because I even know from the work that I do, this whole field presents just enormous opportunities to learn about a lot of interesting developments that are happening all the time. It's a challenge and a good one. You'll never ever get bored if you follow this particular sector, online safety issues, because there's new developments occurring through all the great changes that are taking place in innovation on a regular basis. Again, it's our job to make sure it's done safely. We had a very interesting experience with one of our members in Ecuador. They created a digital education program promoted by a major company, Telefoncia Movistar. It's one of the largest companies, online companies in the region. And they agreed to support children's development on these 21st century skills. I think Christian would be very familiar with what we're talking about when we talk about those skills. Reaching 60,000 teachers, 100,000 students, and 700 schools. Just wanted to point that out, that you can work very effectively with the private sector to be a partner in this and reach a lot of new avenues. Just a little bit about Web Safe and Wise. It's on our website. We have all kinds of materials, a policy brief, a social media card. These things we certainly have the policy brief available for people who want it. We can make the social media cards available. We also have some cool banners. Again, trying to engage young people, show that they're active participants in their own lives, doing good things. And again, just to show you some of the other things that we have, if you're interested in looking at them and taking them and adapting for them for your work, we're on a learning curve as well, testing out new digital literacy programs, talking to young people, developing a children's call to action with children about what they want and they need, developing national advocacy plans in pilot countries. Here's a couple more of our collateral. We use the color green because we think it's very engaging and lively. So as I mentioned, the campaign was launched in Barcelona, 19 May 2020. We are developing a Children's Advisory Council. I'll tell you about that in a minute. We're developing national advocacy strategies, starting in 6 pilot countries with an advocacy toolkit. For more details, you can go to our website, or you can contact Ryan D'Souza, our Advocacy and Policy Advisor. That's his email address. I can also give it to you offline. Ryan can keep you up to date on some of the things that we're doing with national advocacy work. He can introduce you to Faith, who's working on the Children's Call to Action. But again, what we're trying to do with this call to action is develop a children's call to action for stakeholders, encourage them to participate in advocacy at the national, regional, and global level, to learn about online safety, share learnings with each other, represent the voices of their peers, help develop child-friendly materials, plan activities, and support the implementation of the Web Safe and Wise. So more to come, but I did want to point out we are changing the world with children, and very happy again to be part of this. This is one component of the education challenge. I know we'll be learning about more, but again, just in closing, we just have to remind ourselves that threats and opportunities online exist in equal measure, but we've learned enough through the implementation of the Children's Convention to say we can do a lot with young people. We can mobilize communities to make a difference. And this is one example. Christian, thank you, and over to you. I'm going to stop share.
Thank you so much, Meg, for sharing your valuable information for your work and leadership. It's interesting. As adults, we're sitting in front of the camera, we're listening to us adults speak. You're probably saying, that's all great, but there must be something else. And you're right. In my career as an educator, I have realized something. There is nothing more powerful than the voice of a child whose voice has been nurtured, who has been given an opportunity, more importantly, who has access to that information. It is my pleasure to introduce an individual who has one of the strongest voice, who is an advocate and an individual who will one day continue to protect other youth in different ways. She has not yet graduated high school, but is well on her way. Please welcome Kate.
Thank you so much, Christian, for that introduction. Good afternoon, attendees of this very important panel. My name is Kate, and I'm a youth ambassador at ECPAT-USA. I'm 16 years old, so I'm going into my junior year of high school. I have been engaged with ECPAT-USA for the past year as a participant and also as an intern. Throughout this time, I've become deeply invested in our critical mission to fight human trafficking and labor exploitation. I've seen firsthand how social media has eroded my own friends and fellow students' self-confidence. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our social lives moved almost completely online. Growing up in an online environment made us extremely vulnerable to online sexual predators. Kids who have been socially isolated, who are searching for any form of social outlet, are particularly at risk of being targeted by these people. It is scary how easy it is to fall prey to unsafe online behavior. I will never forget the girl in middle school who was encouraged by a boy she liked to send a topless photo on Snapchat. She did, and he proceeded to send them to multiple other boys who purchased them. Fortunately, these images did not fall into the hands of a human trafficker, but it could have easily escalated into an even more dangerous situation. To this day, many years later, she still has panic attacks, anxiety, and lasting trauma from this experience. The deep-rooted issue here is the lack of education surrounding healthy online relationships. I cannot emphasize enough how important the work of ECPAT is for the development of young people's confidence and protection of their safety online. Many schools fail to educate their students on safe online behavior, which leaves kids with no knowledge of the dangers they could face from sexual predators on various social media platforms. Due to the lack of resources and people with this kind of educational background, schools do not offer these types of preventative programs. Another key and critical reason is that administration and teachers are scared to speak on this issue. We need to change this. These young kids and teens do not know how to use their voice in a cautious way. And there's nothing more powerful, like Christian said, than a youth's voice in the fight for justice. I've been incredibly lucky to have been through ECPAT's workshops and education programs on child trafficking, healthy online behavior, and using our community as a safety resource. While working with other interns my age and younger during these programs, I could truly see their confidence develop. We shared personal experiences about our relationships and worked together to find solutions to different scenarios regarding online and in-person behavior that is concerning. I have been fortunate enough to be given an education at school and with ECPAT about safe online profiles. However, for many students I was working with, it was very new information. For me, staying in control online, being wary of certain unknown profiles, and understanding the dangers of sexting seemed like obvious information. The fact that other kids lack this knowledge truly reaffirmed my belief in the necessity of an education program, like ECPAT's, being available to all students. Before I started my educational journey with ECPAT, I was completely unaware that human trafficking was prominent in the United States. It always seemed so far away from me, a foreign business that could never affect me or my community. During these past few years, I've also done a lot of research on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. This man and the many other people a part of the sex trafficking ring operated just a few miles away from my school and my home. I was absolutely shocked to learn that my friend's aunt had Jeffrey Epstein as a math teacher in high school. This issue became one that felt so foreign to one that was right there in front of me. I wasn't alive during this time, but I know that today there are still so many young kids, teens, and adults who are being trafficked, and they need our help. It is incredibly important not just to educate the youth about their own online safety, but also how to recognize when others are in dangerous situations and identify when there's an issue regarding trafficking or grooming. The only way to ensure the safety of our youth is to provide a positive and engaging educational program that focuses on safety and prevention before it is too late. They need to also have the tools to be able to protect themselves. Of course, the fight against human trafficking goes beyond just workshops. By educating youth about this issue, we can create a larger and stronger fight against sex trafficking. Students at different schools have started clubs surrounding activism and victim support. The more people that have knowledge about this problem, the more people that can fight it and advocate for more protective legislation to create real change. I've said it many times throughout this speech, but the need for a student education program on the commercial sexual exploitation of children is absolutely necessary and must be provided. It is all of our jobs to ensure the safety of all people, and the best way to do so is with preventative work. I urge you all to advocate for the provision of quality and equitable education that will help so many future children. Thank you all for listening, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Kate, for your words and leadership. I told you, right? There's nothing like a youth's voice to really wake you up. Because one day it won't be any of us here. It'll be Kate and many of the youths that we actually engage with. Next, I have the pleasure to introduce two strong individuals that I have seen act in a moment's notice to help any youth. They are role models to youth and the first line of defense in their school. Wendy Gudema is the Human Trafficking Youth Prevention Education Counselor at the Brentwood School District in Long Island. Her role is to facilitate the implementation of the program within the school district, which is aimed to bring human trafficking education to the district staff and students. She has previously served as a caseworker for Suffolk County Child Protective Services, where she investigated cases of child abuse and neglect. Also, Sarah Tricoche has worked for the Brentwood School District in many capacities over the last 19 years, starting as a part-time teacher assistant to becoming a school counselor. To say that she is just a school counselor would be an insult to the role and to her, for she is much more than that to her students and to the school community. During her time at Brentwood, Sarah worked for Family Services League as an educational liaison to the community school, outreach rehab as a counselor, and strong youth as a prevention specialist. She dedicated her career to helping students find their passion and lead them to their purpose. She believes in a holistic approach when working with students, as her philosophy is student-centered and solution-focused to help students reach their full academic, social, and emotional potential. Please welcome Wendy Gudema and Sarah Tricoche.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
I'll be speaking first. My name is Sarah Tricoche. I have the pleasure of working with Wendy on a daily basis to combat this problem that's been riddling our community here in Brentwood, Long Island. We have a huge, high Latino population. It is 86.2% of our students in Brentwood are of Latino descent, and most of which are brand new to the country. So you can imagine there are many, many barriers that these students have to overcome. Just, you know, being new to the country and learning our culture and our traditions here. Many of them, you know, they're extremely vulnerable to human trafficking due to the lack of knowledge of our national laws, our civil rights, and the language barrier, just to name a few. As well as the other population that we have, you know, this is extremely important to all of our students. Brentwood is one, I think the only on Long Island that has the privilege of starting this initiative to bring awareness to Long Island and to let Long Island in general know how important this initiative is. This program is extremely important to educate these students who are at risk and on the risk. You know, it helps them build resilience against labor and sex trafficking. It encourages them to, you know, just to have self-esteem and know our laws as we work with them on a daily basis. Wendy is going to speak about what we do on a daily basis and how we run the program through Brentwood High School and all of our schools in Brentwood.
Good afternoon, everyone. After hearing Kate speak, it just gives me more reassurance on why our human trafficking youth prevention education program in our school district or any school district is such a significant program that, you know, the prevention of human trafficking is key to combating this huge issue that is facing not just our community, but it's everywhere around the world. Our human trafficking youth prevention education program has three main objectives, and I will be talking to you about what those objectives are. Our first one is to provide human trafficking prevention education to educators and other staff that equips them to identify and respond to students who are experiencing human trafficking or are at high risk, and to report those concerns in accordance with our human trafficking school safety protocol, and to respond to students' disclosures in a culturally and linguistically responsive, trauma-informed, person-centered manner. Our second objective is to deliver human trafficking prevention education to students that addresses the risk factors and is designed to build resilience to labor trafficking and sex trafficking by strengthening the students' knowledge and skills to increase their perception of risk and encourage the adoption of healthy behaviors. And the third core objective of the program is to develop and implement the human trafficking school safety protocol. And we did this with consultation with our local law enforcement. And as well, and this protocol facilitates the reporting of trafficking concerns to the appropriate authorities, whether it be child welfare, such as Child Protective Services, or law enforcement. We also notify parents when it is necessary and adequate, the caregivers as well when necessary and appropriate, and we refer students to supportive, person-centered, trauma-informed, culturally responsive, and linguistically appropriate services in which we work together with different human trafficking prevention programs around our community to assure that we have the right resources available for our students. And this is why it is important that we do work closely with ECPAT-USA, who we have a strong partnership with. They are a supporting partner to us, and they help us bring this curricula to our district, and that is how we implement this human trafficking education to our staff and our students. And again, prevention is key, and I know Christian had mentioned how important prevention is, in order to combating human trafficking, and that is what we are trying to do. To bring this prevention education program. But in addition to that, to assist our students who are experiencing human trafficking, who are potential victims, who are survivors of human trafficking, how can we as counselors, as school counselors, how can we aid those students to process their trauma? How can we be there to support them, to listen to them? And that is why the protocol is important. In case of a disclosure, who do we contact? What should we do as counselors, as school personnel, as school staff? And it stems from the teachers, school counselors, school psychologists, social workers, and we are trying to all work together in order to help our students out and, again, just do our best to combat the human trafficking issue in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy and Sarah, for your work, for your efforts, which I know go beyond the normal school hours, right? As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it's really not about one person. It's about a team, right? Now, our third presenter this afternoon is an individual that I hold in such high regards because her care for kids is so visible. It's so visible that although we engage in remote work, you can still feel that care for kids through the screen and through the audio. You immediately know that she is not only an advocate, but a leader. Megan Davis is currently serving as Detention Supervisor for Berrien County Juvenile Center in Berrien Center, Michigan. She started working there as a direct care staff before being promoted. Megan holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Grand Valley State University. Megan is a member of the trial court's human trafficking review team for juvenile offenders and process human trafficking education to the youth detained at the center. Please welcome Megan Davis.
Hello, everybody. Pleased to share our partnership with ECPAT with you all and the programming. I'm just gonna share my screen here for a slideshow. All right. So I work as a detention supervisor. A little bit about the facility. We're located about an hour and 45 minutes from Chicago, Illinois. We serve 12 to 18-year-old male and female youth that are involved in our county's juvenile justice system. These youth are pre-adjudicated, meaning they have not been sentenced for their alleged offenses. So they get housed with us and are waiting through the court process. Currently, we're only taking the most serious of offenders. We have a screening process that helps to determine who we will take, what risks they have, what status. Youth become involved in the system for many reasons. Offenses can range from retail fraud to assault and gun crimes. Due to us taking the only most serious offenders, many of our youth have assault charges or more severe charges. Most of these youth struggle with social skills. They lack social cueing. They're not quite sure, you know, when they should say something, when they shouldn't say something, how they communicate. They're experiencing some form of neglect and abuse. They experience mental health issues. And some of them are on psychotropic medication. We currently have 11 youth lodged, and I would say 6 or 7 of them are on psychotropic medication of some form. And average length of stay is about 33 days. However, we just had a youth with us for 6 months awaiting a placement. And that's usually the length of most placement programs in the United States right now for residential treatment is 6 months. So in addition to staying in detention 6 months, that individual will go spend at least 6 months at a residential treatment facility. These youth on a day-to-day basis receive schooling. All of our teachers are special education certified. Our direct care staff also teach social skills, risk management, anger management, moral decision-making, how to write goals for themselves, life skills, and things like that. So each day they not only receive school education, but they also receive other types of skills. Over time, I've been here 15 years, and over time, I've learned a lot about these kids, what their needs are, what they understand and know in their lives, and what they don't know. And what we found is that there's a need for further education about online identities and things like that. And so human trafficking kind of comes up frequently around here. Berrien County is located on US Highway I-94. It's between Chicago, Illinois and Detroit, Michigan. Law enforcement has identified this stretch of highway as a hotspot for human trafficking in the Midwest. We began to see a trend specifically in our facility of youth being detained that were experiencing sexual abuse or involved in unhealthy sexual relationships, and potential trafficking involved in a few of those cases. So we developed a human trafficking review process. Our review team consists of a juvenile probation officer supervisor, detention supervisor, which is currently myself, a victim witness advocate with the county, a prosecuting attorney, an FBI agent, the Michigan State Police detective, and a county sheriff's department representative. Each new detention intake and each youth that's placed on juvenile probation with the county completes a human trafficking screening form with either a case manager or a probation officer. The human trafficking review team then forms and makes determinations if the youth has been trafficked or abused in some way, and they make referrals to the appropriate resource. So whether that's a further police investigation, going to our child's advocacy center and having an interview with the specialist there, determining what kind of case management services are needed to get that youth the help that they need through the situation. So what else can be done? That was what was going through all of our heads. What else can we do that is not after the fact? It's not after the abuse has happened. It's not after someone has been trafficked. What can we do on the front end? So a further need for human trafficking education came to be. Based on the information gathered from the forms, we found that most youth in the county's juvenile justice system struggled with understanding what a healthy relationship is, how to keep themselves safe online, and when meeting new people, what consent is, and understanding what vulnerabilities are. A lot of youth in the system, like many youth, think they're invincible, think that nothing can happen to them. And then what they find when presented with information is, oh, things are happening. And sometimes they don't even know that that's wrong. They think it's okay. Youth in the juvenile justice system also have more vulnerabilities than the typical teenager. You know, plenty of youth in our care are wondering where they're going to sleep for the night. Is their mom going to be home when they get home, or has she been arrested again? Is there food in the refrigerator? Is my boyfriend going to send me to his friend for the night? These are all conversations that haven't been had with youth over the years here. They have other concerns on their mind than what they think is not okay and what is okay. So after looking at all of that, we were really like, we have to do something. So what was needed for the programming? It was critical that it was led by a third party and not by our detention staff. Like many places around the United States right now, we're very critically short-staffed. So putting another burden upon our staff was not a realistic option. Covering all the areas above, the vulnerabilities, the healthy relationships, consent, all those are critical for kids to know, boundaries. And then also interactive learning. These kids don't want someone to sit and lecture them all day. It goes in one ear and out the other. They want, you know, things by kids for kids. They want, you know, pencil and paper. They want to draw. They want to interact and have conversations with people. I happened to come across ECPAT in a Google search by chance. learned about their Youth Against Child Trafficking YACT program, met with Christian on Zoom, learned about the program and found that it did meet our needs. So what are we doing in the programming? We began in March 2022 of this year. We do 5-week-long sessions, 1 hour per session, and we're currently in the second grouping. It's done via Zoom. Youth are provided with paper and markers to participate. Our direct care staff are also encouraged to participate, and I actually find that most of them do engage in that, which is really great because they can share that information with people they know. So not only are we affecting the kids here, our staff are, you know, arming themselves within this information and sharing it as well. What are the topics? Internet safety, which is huge now. You know, our kids are online more than they ever were. Most of them have some sort of phone, which then connects to what? The internet, and it's instant. When I was their age, it took like 30 minutes to get on the internet. Now it's just right there. You just click on it and it's there. This digital age with the pandemic and being home, you know, they're more exposed and vulnerable than they were before. Building healthy relationships. It's very, very critical. Many youth in the juvenile justice system struggle with healthy relationships. Their families don't operate in a healthy way. So they take what they've learned from their families and they partake in those friendships and relationships with other people in that way. They think it's okay when, you know, someone is hit, when they're passed around from, you know, boyfriend to friend and so forth. They're not aware of what's healthy and unhealthy. Creating communities of support. You know, a lot of these kids, when they leave facilities like mine, they go back right to their environment. So having communities of support, identifying where they can get help, making those connections before they leave are critical. Human trafficking. Again, you know, being able to provide them with warning signs, education about what, you know, oh, here's this website. Why shouldn't I click on this link? Do I know this person? And things like that. And consent and vulnerabilities. You know, just because you say yes once doesn't mean that it's yes the next time. The answer can change to no. Some of our center's youth have reported that they weren't aware of some of these ways to keep themselves safe online, that they can say no, or even what a healthy relationship is. Our youth report that the sessions have been helpful and easy to understand. This is critical in our facility as we have youth who come from different educational backgrounds, are different ages and different maturity levels. Like I said, we service 12 to 18. So that's a really big learning and maturity gap to cover. And the WIAC program does a great job with that. ECPAT, the staff do a great job with that. Once the 5-week program is completed, we break for about 30 days, and then we begin a new program. This is done to ensure that we get each youth as much as we can through this program, or even if it's just one session, getting them something. So that way they can take that and potentially share it with their families, with other kids and other programs. Just start passing the message around. Knowledge is power. So we want to arm our kids with all of that as much as possible. And, you know, we talk about quality and equitable education, and the WIAC program provides that. You know, it's able to be done virtually. It's quality work. These kids are learning a vast amount in simplified, interactive ways. It addresses all our maturity levels. It addresses the ages. It addresses their different educational backgrounds. Simple to understand. So it's very much quality education, and it's equitable for all the kids in our facility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan, for all your work. To be honest, it's always a pleasure when our staff shows up or when I join the meetings themselves. And you're absolutely right. When the staff begins to work, it's a different atmosphere because then it is a team. Absolutely too. Thank you so much. Our last presenter, but definitely not least, is Amaris Obando. She's an individual who is a daughter of a single mother, child sex abuse survivor, pastor, and former social service worker, and substance abuse counselor, director of operations. Community building and Serving others was ingrained early into her core. While student teaching in New York City Department of Education high schools, Amaris realized that the challenges of home life were impacting her students' ability to perform at school. And it became her passion to look deeper and hear their stories, engage parents and community in identifying challenges and solutions. Since 2019, Amaris has worked for Windham, and since 2021 has partnered with ECPAT-USA to help kids in different areas. If there's someone out there representing our organization who has really integrated in every single program ECPAT offers, it's Windham through Amaris Obando, a true advocate and leader. Ladies and gentlemen, Amaris Obando.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am what is known at, can you hear me? Just want to make sure you can, okay. I am what is known at Windham as the empowerment coach. I am from Windham Family Services, and Windham was founded in New York City in 1806 by a group of dedicated, forward-looking women, including Isabella Graham and Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton. Yes, the same Liza featured in the Hamilton musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Windham has been meeting the needs of New York City's poorest, most vulnerable children for more than 2 centuries. Today, our amazing leadership, led by CEO Kim Watson, continues to consider deeply, tackle through intense education and planning to provide crisis intervention for our society's greatest generational challenges, such as racial injustice, gender inequality, gun violence, lack of health care, mental health stability, equality, hunger, poverty, gun violence, human rights inequality, and more. Today, Windham Family Services continues to serve a large population in various neighborhoods in the 5 boroughs of New York City and beyond. I have the privilege of working there, and thank you again for having me. I forgot to say that. The empowerment coach role was initiated in Windham 3 years ago in 2019. When Associate Vice President Ms. Lanika Ross noticed the increased safety concerns for foster care youth being exploited and trafficked increasingly in foster care youth. She had watched these patterns rise over her past 15 years in foster care. Passionate for child safety and wellness and eager to protect them from predators online and beyond, Ms. Ross requested the role of a mentor who would provide Windham foster care with services in the vein of the 3 Ps, the national paradigm against human trafficking, of protection, prosecution, and prevention. And I always add in there intervention, because a lot of the times when I'm called into support of youth, they've already started undergoing the grooming and recruitment process. So it's an intervention by that point. As I entered this role, we wondered how we would tackle a worldwide epidemic of exploitation, where children are violated daily, bullied, threatened, groomed, and recruited right at the touch of their fingertips, while their parents are right there in the room. We learned very early that psychoeducation was the foundation of these 3 Ps. It started in each home, in each community. Tackling this abuse to our youth and families required awareness and understanding what our families in our communities were experiencing, as well as the trauma, the triggers, and the high vulnerabilities our families were experiencing, from the head of household down to the youngest one reaching up to be held and accepted. We had to understand the needs which opened up our children, our teens, our families as a whole to exploitation through force, fraud, and coercion, all during a worldwide health lockdown, isolating our burgeoning youth with deep social needs. We also realized this global pandemic required a global target goal, but with grassroots focus. It was at an ACS anti-sex trafficking training of community providers in 2021 where I first heard Dr. Toala discuss the ECPAT-USA team's focus and their passion on the 3 Ps paradigm as well. When Dr. Toala stated that they welcomed sharing their curriculum in communities and educating youth, I knew this was the partner we were looking for with Windham. Within our internal network of service providers, including foster care, after-school programming, preventive human services, mental health and medical providers, and community building and outreach, the Empowerment Coach Department knew that the mission and capabilities of ECPAT-USA would be instrumental in our organization-wide goal of increasing awareness and helping our families weave together solutions for children's safety, weave together solutions for building on their strengths and their power of consent, and also learning about the unseen weaknesses online in their communities, in their homes, in their schools, and beyond. And our amazing partnership began. Under Dr. Toala's leadership, the ECPAT-USA educational team has provided our youth and children in foster care with equitable education and inclusivity in a manner which supports the application of Graham Windham's 4 pillars, which is respect, grow, thrive, and lead. Y-ACT programming has educated a large portion of Graham youth via workshops, equally between the parent workshops and the Y-ACT curriculums, and the empowerment coaches mentorship. I've learned so much that I've been able to transmit it, even when those wonderful youth are not sitting necessarily in the virtual workshops. ECPAT-USA has empowered me to expose other youth to their own vulnerabilities and protective factors, keeping them safer online with heightened awareness against exploiters and their schemes. Youth are also being coached in building healthy relationships, able to freely confront issues of consent with tact and positive strategies against trauma bond, abuse, and exploitation. Youth are always welcomed and encouraged to discuss what they have learned with other Graham Windham providers, as well as becoming peer protectors and educators in their own communities. The importance and impact of the ECPAT curriculum and its team, with their understanding of human needs and how to educate all ages, has been invited and ushered into our Youth Success Beacon program in PS 123 in Upper Harlem. They've been ushered into our parent clusters. They've been ushered into the Empowerment Coach series. The curriculum continues to be offered consistently every couple of months for the past year and a half to our therapeutic and preventive departments, which are foster care providers. And we're offering that for continued education and networking for youth and parent supports. We believe highly in our families finding support in the community, and that knowing a global and national team is behind them to keep their children safe is encouraging to them. Our parents have been amazed at the presentation of these tough conversations and the tools given to them to continue these conversations with their teens and even begin awareness and discussions on consent earlier with their young children. With their younger children. The Empowerment Coach Department is so appreciative and excited about the empowerment and self-sufficiency and resume building as well as a deterrent to human trafficking that ECPAT has offered to our foster care youth via employment through summer youth internships for the 2nd year in a row. Thank you, ECPAT. The Empowerment Coach Department adamantly advocates for the empowerment which comes through the ECPAT-USA curriculum to youth, parents, and even children, empowering them to ask the right questions. And it opens up conversations about self-empowerment, peer safety, and education, along with cultural desensitization in our neighborhoods, where exploitation has existed under guise. This curriculum also opens up mentoring relationships and builds rapport with safe adults with which our youth can connect in order to speak openly about their past traumas and their online identities. This safe zone with safe adults jumpstarts the conversation of healing and recovery with which we continue once they finish the Y-ACT workshops, building upon the foundations of trust established. The ECPAT educators' demeanors and strength-based approach and acceptance of all youth, all questions via encouragement, acknowledgement, and respect is a chance for our youth to access education, strength, skills, and hope in a time of so much transition and such high threat to their safety on a daily basis. The Empowerment Coach continues to seek opportunities for ECPAT-USA, for the parent and Y-ACT curriculum to enter known spaces again and again and keep the conversation going, and new spaces. in our partnership to create communities which continue the conversation and seek new ways to understand and new ways to usher in prevention, protection, and prosecution in advocacy on behalf of vulnerable youth and impacted families everywhere. We are so glad to be partners with ECPAT with the goal that every child be respected, every child be kept safe, and every child be informed on how to correct, create, and maintain healthy relationships at home, in schools, in intimate partner relationships, and in communities and beyond. We look forward to many more years together with ECPAT. Thank you, fellow educators.
Thank you so much, Amaris. On that note, I would actually like to take a moment to say thank you to the entire ECPAT team, because although my name was mentioned many times, we can't do it alone. It is a team effort, collaborative effort, right? I will quote one of our colleagues who says, Team ECPAT, indeed, Team Anti-Trafficking. I want to thank you all. Thank to all of our presenters who truly are advocates, mentors, and educators. Just know that with you on the field, our kids have a better opportunity. And when I say our kids, it means every single youth child within this world. I want to thank all of you out there for listening, thinking, and for taking action. Yes, although ECPAT-USA is the presenter of this panel, there is no competition within the anti-trafficking field. For we all have the same goal, which is to end child trafficking, to provide equitable and sustainable preventive educational programs to our youth and our communities. If we reach this goal, then I am sure we will contribute and be that much more closer to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So I ask, won't you join us in protecting our youth through prevention education? I sure hope you do, because without you, it's only a few, and with you, there's a lot more. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our presenters. At this moment, I would like to open it up to questions from the audience, okay, from our fabulous audience, to any one of our panelists. Okay, see? All right, have the first question here. I'll read it out. How must programs for an online prevention and protection be created differently for the content of countries and different parts of the world? Question. Any one of our panelists?
I think really what's important is identifying that need of your client. Obviously, there's going to be different economic, cultural, education backgrounds, and all of those need to be considered when we're thinking about ways to help our youth. With online prevention, you know, a great thing about the WIAC program is it's, you know, there's youth input. And that's critical, I think, with youth around the world, not just here in the States. You know, they very much are with their peers and they want feedback from their peers. They want information from their peers. And so really, when looking at creating programming, identifying those needs and making it realistic for them. What's real and what's within their realm of what is real.
Thank you so much, Megan, for that answer. Anyone else on the same topic? No? As Megan was saying, that is crucial. Partnership. There are experts in every field in every country. And it is important that the lines of communication always remain open. That's why many of us engage in different programs. ECPAT-USA collaborates with ECPAT Mexico in bringing this program to there. And we learn from them as well, because it's not only about us teaching, it's also about learning. Okay. While we continue with questions answered, and I wait more, I'm going to read out some of the ones that have been answered already, but I think they're important in order to highlight. Jacqueline Shapiro's asked, please talk about building trust as an essential component of reaching teens about trafficking. This was answered by Megan Davis. Building rapport with youth is critical to talking about deeper topics. How to do it? Let the youth talk about themselves. They love doing it. Absolutely. Find out their interest and draw the connections. That's an expert response right there. Rapport is one of the greatest tools that not only counselors, but also educators and parents must use, right? Excellent. We also have teens frequently have contentious relationships with their family. How is this addressed to give teens ongoing support? Megan David once again says, being a non-family support can be quite an important piece to working with youth. It is important to establish clear boundaries with the youth about your role as support, and if possible, to get buy-in from parent guardians of the support. Absolutely true. Okay. We also have a previous question. Oh no, this one was answered already. We also have a different one that was sent to me directly. So sorry. We'll read it now on the line. And this one is addressed to the general panel. Okay. It says, so sorry, what resources are available for parents who want to talk to their kids about trafficking but don't know where to start? Anybody? Well, I'll take that on. Not a problem, since we're a team here. That conversation is scary, to be quite honest. As a parent, guardian, or caregiver, it's one of the toughest conversations. It used to be that the sex conversation was the hardest. That is no longer true. It is one of the hardest, but there are other topics, right? And one of them is online safety or anti-trafficking and what it is. Currently, ECPAT-USA has a curriculum geared specifically only for parents, for adults, or future parents, or if you're an aunt, an uncle, right? Why? Because within that curriculum, not only do you learn what is online safety, what is human trafficking, child trafficking, but you also learn how to initiate these conversations, because they are the hardest. How to begin. And one of the techniques that Megan Davis said is like, kids love talking about themselves. And one of the tactics that one of the strategies that we actually use is, hey, ask them what do they know about the topic, or examine a video and say like, I don't understand it. Can you explain it to me? Kids love roles. If you give a child a role, they will run with it because they will make the best out of it. Okay. See, we have any other questions here? Oh, we do have another question. Have you received advice from students on how to prevent trafficking? Advice that surprised you and is different from what is included in the program? Panelists, have you ever received advice from a youth saying like, hey, maybe this is also how you can prevent trafficking? Anyone? It's a tough one. Okay, so I'll respond from being on the field. To be quite honest, kids are experts. Survivors are experts, but youth, they come right along. Why? Kids see us as old. I'm still a young person. We're all still young, okay? But kids, youth will say automatically that we don't know, that they know best. And one thing is true, the way they speak, the way they type, and the scenarios that they come up with are much different than we can think of. That's why our curriculum is not only survivor informed, it's also youth informed. Some of the strategies that you see there are not from us, they're from kids. That's why we run a youth internship program during the summer in which the youth contribute to this curriculum. Not only they contributed to enhancing it, but also to teaching it. Because once again, there's nothing better than a child's voice, as we heard from Kate. Right? Any other questions? Questions from panelists, for the panelists? No. Here's another question. What are students' usual reactions when you talk about this? This one comes for the panelists. What are the kids' reactions when these workshops begin?
Some you can see as uncomfortable. They don't really want to talk about it with you, but the way that it's presented in our Zoom sessions, the way that the topic is introduced, and the fact that the YX staff, the direct care staff that are in those sessions are willing to listen and to the youth and what they're saying and not laugh about it. or not believe them, that's a really critical piece. So they're able to then be more open and receptive to what's being said, being willing to share things. So it's kind of a combination, I think, of a little bit of being uncomfortable and uneasy, but then once that ease comes in, that acceptance, they're very talkative and receptive to what's being presented.
I would like to respond to that as well. This is Sarah. I apologize, my camera is not working at the moment. However, what I've experienced in going into the classrooms, you do, and I agree with you, you do experience a wide variety of emotions. You know, some of them are in disbelief because why would you be speaking to us about this? We're here. That doesn't happen here. Especially when we're speaking to the students who were born here in America. It's like, that just doesn't happen. That happens in other countries. So it's very, very informative for them. Some of them do feel uncomfortable. I think it also depends on the age group, on how they're going to deal with it. Of course, you do adjust the language and how much you do speak to them about, depending about, you know, with their age group. But it's definitely a wide variety of reactions that we do get, but they do walk away with knowledge that they didn't have before, which is always what we want to accomplish.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, no problem. We do have some open-ended questions here. Let's see, Amaris, perhaps you can speak them because I see you're typing them. So I'll read them out loud. How can programs address underlying conditions in society that contribute to vulnerability, poverty, violence, and homelessness?
So I was expressing that once we get the conversation going and we begin to discuss these vulnerabilities and we begin to talk about the red flags will of course lead us into, well, how can we avoid these red flags? How do we avoid the predicament where now we're vulnerable, where now we're open to being exploited? And that leads us right into that conversation of, right, if I don't have money, right, and someone comes to me and they're asking me, do I want a job? If I already have a job, I don't need to have that conversation with a stranger about a job because I already have, I'm securing the bag. So it leads us right into, right, the core issues of what has been affecting our communities and our families. And then when we are able to have that conversation about those core issues, now we're problem solving as to how we're going to get our family to thrive without, right, being abused. So.
Thank you so much, Amaris, for that answer. Okay. Let's see, we have other questions. This is for the entire panel. Could you please share curriculum recommendations for advocating implementation of our schools? I think this is coming from, you know, it's sometimes difficult to enter schools, to enter that area because the nature of the topic, you know, there are so many unknowns, they're fearful of it. So are there any strategies that anyone here would like to share in terms for advocating to implement curriculums such as ECPAT-USA or any other anti-trafficking organization to enter schools or youth servicing organizations?
Hello, I think I would like to give my opinion on that question. So a lot of what we have seen here on Long Island is that a lot of school districts do not want to, I guess, admit that human trafficking is an issue in their district because of the possibly negative feedback or reluctance that they might get from the community. But when in reality, it is a big issue. And so what Brentwood did is they communicated with their local law enforcement to see how relevant human trafficking is in how relevant human trafficking is within our school district. How many cases do they have on human trafficking? And we were able to find out that it was a lot. And many of those human trafficking cases involved, you know, some of our students in the high school. And that's when we figured out, okay, we do need a human trafficking program in the district. It is an issue and we have to address it. We just can't ignore it. We can't say, no, it's not an issue here, when in reality it is, regardless of, you know, any negative feedback that we might get from other school districts. What we have also seen is that the parents are very receptive and they're very appreciative of the program because they realize that it is an issue and they want to know how to, you know, deal with at home with their children, and how can they protect their children and what the school is doing to help protect their children. So that's how we have been able to get this program in the school district, is by communicating with the local law enforcement and seeing how relevant it is in their community.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Anybody else on strategies for advocating? And this question is also tied into, we have another question, how can we advocate for the inclusion of trafficking prevention programs throughout the United States educational system? It's a very, very good question. It's a complicated one, but I can tell you this, many states have already adopted human trafficking training as part of the K through 12 curriculum, right? Which is a victory because, as I said, access to information is crucial for our kids. Speak to your local elected officials, right? Bring the topic and raise the question, do you know what human trafficking is, right? It is sometimes a silent threat for our kids because we don't know. And with remote learning, unfortunately, it has increased and it's become even more silent because kids interact in the internet, right? We can definitely explore more on that one because that is very strategic. I think, and every partner here has their own take on how we can accomplish this, and we can definitely sit down and discuss. We also have a question. Elizabeth asks, what advice do you have on how to engage parents, caregivers who may be undocumented and or do not speak English? It's a very good question. Anyone in the panel?
I think I can help with that question too. We actually have a lot of, like my coworker Sarah mentioned, we have a lot of Latino or Hispanic families, and many of them are new immigrants to our community who don't speak the language. So it is important that when we communicate with them, that we have someone that can speak the language, or if you don't have a person, maybe some translation services, because it is important to be able to communicate this, especially topics like this that are important in their native language. So one of the priorities that Brentwood did when implementing the Human Trafficking Youth Prevention Education Program was to assure that you know, one of the people from the committee spoke Spanish. In that case, it's myself. I am able to communicate with our parents that are only Spanish speaking in Spanish. And, you know, we try to go ahead and look for employees that can communicate in different languages, or if we can't find anyone, maybe a translation services. A lot of our counselors do that. If they're not able to communicate in the native language, use a translation service in order to help our families communicate, because it is very important.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It really is. And even that, sometimes having someone to translate or someone who speaks the language makes a whole lot of difference. It definitely does. And for those of us that perhaps are interested in languages, also paying close attention to the dialects, as words really do become very different, at least when speaking from the Spanish-speaking perspective. There are different definitions for different words depending on the country that you're from, right? So don't assume that just because this word means one thing in one area, it means the same in another, right? Right? Any other questions for a panelist? No? Oh, Ms. Obando.
I just wanted to share, just jumping off on what Ms. Wendy said, I wanted to share that I think creating, and this is one of the things that I really appreciate about the ECPAT-USA curriculum, is that when we first begin, we talk deeply and we take a very conscious moment
to create a safe space for our youth and our parents. And no matter the language and no matter, people are people and people want to protect their children. And youth want to be supported and they want to be accepted and they want to find a safe space. And a lot of times the families that we deal with in foster care, where over 40% of our foster care children are being trafficked, it's important for us to make that safe space for them because they've seen it, they've heard it, they know about it, whether it's in their family, it's in their community, it's in their school, their classroom, or they may even know the exploiter. So they have all of the information, they just may not know how to communicate those things. So we want to create that safe space for them and make sure that they are given not only the language translation, but also the terms, and to understand better how to communicate these things so that they can achieve safety and they can protect their children. And so many parents that we particularly work with have so much of their own trauma and experiences with sexual abuse and sex trafficking that we find it very imperative to create that safe space for them so that we can empower them to be able to make it a generational safety for now their children and their children.
Thank you so much, Amaris. That is very true. That is very true. Safe space is the first step for a child to begin to share, right? Okay. Any other questions? No? Any last remarks from our panelists? No? Well, at this moment, I would like to thank all of you once again for taking part as a participant, panelist, or as a viewer of this panel discussion. Once again, my question remains, will you join us? Because I sure hope you do. I will share one final thought. Each and every single person in this panel is a superhero without superpowers. But their greatest power is able to protect kids, advocate for kids, and ultimately nurture their voice so they can one day voice their own opinions. So thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. And please contact us at ECPAT-USA should you have any other questions. Have a great day.